Hey Jane, can you hear me?
Hey, good morning, Mihir. Yeah, I can hear you.
Great. Okay, I'm
Thanks
just gonna
for
turn.
joining me. So yeah, I did post this on the workplace group, but let me just maybe stop sharing my screen and I'll send out a page as a reminder.
Cool. Look, no one is here.
Not yet, no. So I did post it on the training channel. So let me send out a reminder. Oh, we've got some people in the waiting room.
Cool.
Do you want to
So
come over and share your screen?
yeah, I'll do that right now. How does it work with the new Zoom now? Do you have to manually admit everyone into the room?
Um, I do, but I turn it off right away so that I don't have to do that throughout.
Ah, I see. Okay, cool. So let me share the screen. Participants. Let me see if I can mute someone. Okay. Great. Looks like everyone is being let in with their mics on for some reason.
All right, so it also does that as well. So that's just something that I changed at the beginning. So I think we're good to go. Maybe we'll just give it a few minutes so that a few more people can join us. But as it stands right now, you and I are both logged in. We've got our mics on and I've turned everybody else off.
Okay, I am almost ready.
Okay.
Okay, so welcome everyone. And this is the second time I'm running a mortgage webinar. We're going to try to make this a little bit more formal. And I am, from the start, going to sort of set the agenda about what we'll cover. And if there's any questions, we can answer them at the end. If there's anything that's relevant to the current slide, we may answer it at the time as a question is asked. You can, of course, use the question section in your Zoom app to ask any questions that you like. So allow me to introduce myself. My name is Mihir. I am a growth manager here at Zolo. I am also the principal mortgage broker at Zolo Mortgages. I just realized I don't have my laptop plugged in. I think I should, you know what, I'll be fine. Anyway, so yes, I'm a principal mortgage broker here at Zolo. Currently, Zolo is licensed in Ontario to do all mortgage business. We are fully licensed, ready to go. And we've been accepting agent referrals for about the past 3 months since we've been licensed. Uh, it's been a bit of a growing pain issue because we haven't had staff aside from me working those leads, and in between my two jobs it's been a bit tough, but slowly we are starting to ramp up and things are getting going. So I'll tell you a little bit more about the in-house company Zolo Mortgages at the end of the slide so that you have the most retention. Right now, here are the topics that we're going to cover today. So my focus is going to be on what is the new news regarding mortgages. And some of you may be familiar with what's going on. But for those of you that aren't, don't worry, I'm going to be covering the most important parts. I'm also going to be covering the overview and the basics. So the majority of agents that are joining today's session are going to be real estate agents, varying experience, but let's say the focus of your trade has been on real estate. And the focus of my webinar is going to be on teaching you as a real estate agent how you should be approaching clients when it comes to mortgage qualifications or the questions around mortgages, because I think it's a bit of an elusive topic to discuss, but it's probably the most important topic. I've had anyway, I'll go into this in detail later. Let's go into number 3, things to make your clients aware of. Yeah, and we'll talk about this in detail, but there are things that, aside from mortgages, are closing costs or other costs related to obtaining a mortgage that a lot of clients aren't aware of until closing. So we'll discuss those in detail. Tools you can use, and we'll look at both branded and unbranded tools. So what I mean by that is, of course, we're members of multiple organizations as realtors. That's Toronto Real Estate Board or CREA, which is a Canadian Real Estate Association. There's also online tools that probably pop up that your clients are already using that you should be aware of. I'm going to walk you through how to use these tools and what to be aware of and what the numbers mean so that you can give informed information, or let's say, high quality information to your clients when it comes to using these tools. We will go on then into Zolo Mortgages. I'll explain a little bit about who we are and what we're planning on doing. And we'll go into the reminder of how to do referrals to Zolo Mortgages. And then we'll have some time at the very end, like I mentioned, for some Q&A. Okay, so let's get started. We'll start with the mortgage news. And I think the biggest news is the qualification rates dropped to 4.79%. So what does this mean? So it means slightly more affordability for your clients. Yay, that's always a good thing. Really, how much does it mean? It means that someone making $70,000 a year can now afford 1.2% more of an expensive home with 5% down. So $4,000, is that really that big of a change? Well, if you look at these borderline cases of, let's say, a $500,000 or less purchase, $4,000 works out to, more than 10% in terms of offer price. So yes, it could be the difference between you winning a home and you losing a home. But at the same time, when everyone is on the same plate, everyone, I mean, this change applies to everyone who qualifies for a AAA mortgage. Really, what does that mean? It means that you as a real estate agent should be ready to have even higher competition, even more multiple offers, and higher selling prices for certain price segments. Lastly, what it means for you is higher leverage clients. That doesn't necessarily mean much now, but when it comes to repeat business or long-term business, what that means is in between your clients' purchases, let's say planned purchases usually end up being 5 years to hold, you're probably going to see that client holding onto a home a little bit longer because they have a lot more debt involved in paying off. The monthly payments may be higher based on what they can afford, but really it means that when that happens, their savings are dwindling. They can't really save up to buy a bigger home in the future. They can, of course, use the equity in their home, which is, of course, always building, but that doesn't always work out when it comes to the net value of a sold home. So let's hop back a little bit. When I say higher competition, more multiple offers, and higher selling prices for certain price segments, what do I mean by that? Let's talk about the seismic shift that has happened since COVID hit, right? What we've seen is the Toronto market, in terms of real estate sales, has really sort of slowed down. And for Toronto slowing down, what I mean is like, okay, great, we're not seeing as many multiple offers as we used to. And the price ranges for condos, which were, before COVID hit, you could get a 1-bedroom condo for somewhere between $600,000 and $750,000, depending on where you were looking in downtown Toronto. Those have gone down significantly. I've had agents on my team who do have listings in downtown Toronto say, we're not getting any showings. No one is showing up to our homes. And on the flip side, what that means for people who are working areas like Durham and Northern York region, and maybe even parts of Peel region, where there is a very high bang for buck value for your money, it's been crazy out in those areas, right? So there's like a migration of buyers from people who had careers that required them to be in close vicinity to downtown Toronto with working from home. all of a sudden, these people don't need to spend $750,000 for a one-bedroom condo downtown. They can spend that money on something huge in Durham, like a fully detached property with a 40-foot lot. So that area, Durham, has been crazy. If you have clients out there, or if you are have potential clients out there, you want to be absolutely aware of what's going on and what the affordability of your client is. And we'll go into a bit more detail. I think I went off on a tangent, but anyway, that's just kind of me. Current rates, let's talk about this. It's important when you're speaking with clients to be at least slightly informed about what are the current rates, because your client will either ask you or they'll ask you to refer them to someone. So for you to be informed is important. Currently, right now at Zolo Mortgages, what we can offer clients based on their qualifications for 5-year fixed is somewhere around 1.8%. This changes almost on a daily basis right now. Lenders are sending updates for rates on a 2 or 3 day basis. So reach out to me if you really need a hard number. We'll go on based off on qualification. But for 5-year fixed, 1.8, 5-year variable, somewhere around 1.7. For 3-year fixed, once again, somewhere around 1.7. Right now, my preference would be to push a client toward the 5-year fixed or 5-year variable rate. I think that right now, if you were to look at let's say, a graph of where the rates are. So we'll look at qualifying rates. I was looking at something great. Let's see if I can find it. Yes, this is the one. So here's a great sort of graph. I'm going to try to zoom in a bit. Let's see if this works. Right, so interest rates posted for selected products by major chartered banks. So you can consider this sort of an industry average of what rates were being offered. This is a huge range. So it starts at 1975 and it goes all the way into current. And you can see in 75, the rates were somewhere around 15%. And as you follow the trend down, you can see the blue line is the prime rate. The prime rate is the lowest it has ever been, essentially, with no difference to this one, basically. This was around 2010. This was the peak of the Toronto market right around 2017. So you can see after 2017, the rates started going up, and now they've come back down. So if we follow that price trend and do some sort of very unmathematical forecast, what you should be aware of as an agent is that home prices are probably going to start creeping up really aggressively, especially in high demand areas, and they're probably going to stay there. Okay. We don't know what's going to happen with the future of the Canadian economy, but it's not looking good with COVID. This isn't going to be something that's short term, this COVID item either. So we're probably looking at this interest rate, this qualification rate, to stay low for quite a long period of time. Get ready for that rate, the price creep. And essentially what that means for you as an agent is don't be afraid to recommend to your client to place an offer above market value, because that market value is going to climb up and your client's value in the home will match that by the time they close. Essentially, that's what we saw in 2017, where every home was setting the market average that was sold for what the price should be. I hope that kind of makes sense. Do we have any questions so far? Let's see, there's a couple in the chat.
Yeah, we just had one about whether or not this will be recorded, and yes, it is being recorded, so we will post it afterwards.
Awesome. Great, yeah, absolutely. We put this stuff on YouTube. If you guys are not subscribed, subscribe to our YouTube channel. All of this stuff on a weekly basis gets posted up there. Great, so actually, let me go back to my slides. Is this working? There we go. Okay, great. So this is where we are with rates. We're probably going to stay down here with rates for quite a while. If you have buyers in the pipeline, if you have any potential buyers you speak to from the Zolo leads, let them know right now for the next, I would say 6 months is probably the best time to buy with lower qualification rates and lower rates. That's going to come for about another 2 or 3 years. You know, stuff is really going to start getting unaffordable going forward. So buy now. You have to put some urgency under them as well. Having this market intel is really important. with what's happening in the market. CMHC, a lot of the mortgage insurers were saying, hey, you know, the Toronto market is probably going to go down. We have not seen that at all. Okay. So get on their butts and get them out there buying. Does everyone qualify for a mortgage? The answer is absolutely not. Qualifications are based on existing debt and credit score. So there's two sort of ratios that we use when it comes to qualifying a client. There's a GDS ratio and a TDS ratio. GDS is your gross debt service, and that is based on your income and your mortgage payment. What is that ratio? So if that ratio is 39%, then, and if your client score is above 680, or your credit score is above 680, then you qualify for part of a mortgage. The second score is the TDS, the total debt service. And the total debt service not only includes the mortgage payments, but also any existing debt that your client has. That could be car payments, it could be existing credit card debt. Everything is grouped together, and that score is based on how much debt can this person carry, okay, totally. So 44% is that ratio. Don't worry too much about explaining this to your clients. The job of calculating the ratios is always up to the mortgage specialist or the mortgage agent or broker. Leave that to them, but it's important that you understand this sort of how qualification works. Oops. So qualification ratios vary based on lower credit score and income type. What I mean by that is 680, a credit score of 680 is essentially a cutoff for this ratio pair, GDS, TDS, 3944. Anything below 680 significantly reduces a client's ability to buy a home, let's say, because what lenders see is if you have a lower credit score, it means you have either a higher carrying debt or you have a lower ability to pay your debt on time. And that means that there may be delinquencies in mortgage payments. So to mitigate that risk, they lower your ability to either buy a higher priced home or to carry more debt on your mortgage. I think that's pretty much all I want to say about that. Once again, I'm just trying to give you some background information so that you guys understand how this works. And of course, rates are based on your qualifications and also your down payment amounts. So we'll go into this in a little bit more detail, but let's hop into this next major segment, which is for you as a real estate agent about what you should be telling your clients about their mortgage. So I think one of the key benefits of working at Zolo is that it puts you in front of more active, motivated buyers than any other form of lead generation that exists here in Canada. I've sort of been around the block a couple of times. I've worked with other online lead brokerages. I've done my own lead generation in terms of online leads, and the conversion rates here at Zolo are kind of second to none. It speaks a lot about the technology behind the product, but that also means that you are in front of motivated buyers more than any other agent in the industry. So you should know how to speak to these clients in a way that's effective. So ask your client if they've been pre-qualified or if they would like to speak to a mortgage specialist. Remember, when it comes to sales, you want to give the client the ability or the feeling that they're in control of the conversation while really you're the one steering the boat here. So we get a lot of people who say, hey, look, I'm looking at, $1.5 million as a price range. And they've really not done any sort of pre-qualification, or they've not even looked at a mortgage calculator before. So what are they basing their own price range that they're looking at off of? Basically, they're either comparing it to a life that they've lived previously, maybe in another country, or they're kind of saying, hey, look, I don't want to live in a townhouse. I want to live in a detached house. And they don't have a realistic view of what they can actually afford. So the key for you as a real estate agent is never to ask them, what price range are they comfortable looking at? Because in reality, they're pulling numbers out of the air. They don't know what they can afford. So don't ask them what price range they're comfortable with. It's really important that you present them with real relevant information. And that sort of brings us on to the next major step, which is let's talk about what you as an agent can do for your client. Maybe everyone isn't doing this, but a formal buyer consult is something that is elusive. To get the client uh, outside of a showing to spend time with you is a very hard thing to do. But with today's, let's say, market, and with the client's willingness to meet an agent over a web meeting, this has become more relevant. So use Zoom to your benefit here. I'm going to take us over to this Realtor.ca calculator. This is one of the tools that I will recommend to you at the end of the day. You can see it has 3 tiers at the top. There's a payment calculator, a land transfer tax calculator, and more, probably the most effective tool they have here is the affordability calculator, right? So this will really make it simple for you to have a discussion with your client about what can they actually afford, right? You can see the questions here. These are the inputs. What is your client's annual income? And you can break down the income based on, let's say if it's a spouse and another spouse, the co-applicant. You can also use, actually this is a requirement, when it comes to costs, property taxes for the property, condo fees, and heating costs are required, right? And lastly, what is your client's debt payment, right? So what is their existing debt? And you can see they've got 3 examples here. So let's go through, we'll build out a scenario, and then we'll talk about really what can a client afford. So let's say the average income of a person is around $80,000. I don't think that's far-fetched. I think a lot of people fall into this price range. Usually it's not a single applicant, it's a dual applicant. And usually when it comes to a co-applicant, the income is weaker for the co-applicant. So let's say the co-applicant makes around $55,000 a year. The property tax, of course, you can either pull this from the Zolo website, meaning Zolo.ca, or go on MLS and just look at the listing and grab the property tax. What we recommend as kind of a worst case scenario, if you don't have a number for property tax, let's say it's a new construction property, use 1% of the purchase price as your property tax calculation. But let's say we're looking at a property that's around $600,000 in Durham region, let's say maybe even Pickering, that's going to be around $4,250 in terms of a yearly tax. Make sure you have it set to yearly, not monthly, because that will really change your qualification rates. Usually there's no condo fees. Let's say we're looking at a detached or a freehold property. So we'll leave that as 0. Heating costs. This is used as an industry average of $100 per month. I think that's important for you to know. When you're estimating heating costs, use this cost, 100. That's what we use when we're doing our mortgage calculations. For credit card payments, what you're concerned about is not, let's say, standing debt on a client's profile. If they have $4,000 existing, what you're really worried more about is what is the monthly payment, minimum monthly payment. Let's use an example of $400. Usually some people do have car payments. Realistically, that's going to be around $500. And we're going to leave this as zero, pardon me. How much can I afford? That's the magic button here. So there you go. You have your max affordability of 847. If they have a 20% down payment, that works out to this amount. And you can also build your own. So you can enter your own amounts here. In this case, because we're doing 20% plus, in terms of down payment, there is no mortgage insurance on this purchase. So your principal mortgage or your total mortgage required is this amount. It's showing the amortization period is 30 years, which is acceptable. We are currently using the 25-year, which is the mortgage average, industry average. The mortgage rate is competitive, 1.74. And then, of course, you get to what is your monthly payment? And then what is your land transfer tax, right? So all of these costs are great to discuss with your clients. It's great to go through all of these sections and make sure they're aware. If you have a quick Zoom meeting with them, spend 15 minutes, explain all these items, and just make sure they're in the correct mindset, right? When they're looking or browsing at homes. Um, Great. So that's one of the tools. And once again, this is kind of unbranded. This is a Realtor.ca tool. So we're not really afraid of using this when it comes to, let's say, referring business to another brokerage, right? Great.
Here, we've had a question come in about the affordability calculator on the
Yeah, sure.
Zolo app or on the Zolo website. Can
Yeah,
that be used as well?
sort of. You can definitely use that. Uh, Jane, you're gonna have to walk me through this a little bit.
Yeah,
When
so
it comes
just
to,
clicking on any property, yeah, if you scroll down, there's an affordability section,
yeah, that's what I
um,
was thinking
which
as well.
covers some of what you were just showing, but it doesn't look like it's as robust as the Realtor.ca calculator.
That's right. Yeah, we do have this, guys, on our website now. It's on every single property, and it does let your clients play around with some numbers. But realistically, um, I was consulted when they were developing this, and they wanted to get what is the minimum amount of info that we can put out here to get a client to get some idea. It's a great tool when you're just browsing this affordability tool here, and it does have some kind of a forward score as well based on what's going on, but it doesn't give the stuff in detail. And on a consult, you really want to be as detailed as possible to give your client an overview of what they can afford. So I hope that one answers the question. We do have quite a lot of comments coming in. So is there anything else you'd like to ask at this point?
No, I think I was replying to some of the questions about the Zolo app, but yeah, I think we're on point right now.
Great.
Awesome.
I have to get a little bit quicker with my explanations because we're already halfway through. So let's.
There is a question about the Realtor.ca app on somebody's looking at it on their phone.
Mhm.
Obviously, you're taking a look at this on the website. Is there a way to access the calculator through the app that you're aware of?
I don't know. I have not checked the app, but that is something I can definitely check on later. And why don't I post that on Workplace if I do find something for you guys to use? Right now, the website is what I'm familiar with, so this is what I've decided to use.
Great. Thank you so much.
No problem. Okay, so let's keep going. Right, so let's just end with this. Give them a real idea of the home that they can afford and refer them to a mortgage specialist as soon as possible. So at the end of your conversation with your client, you want to say, hey, look, we went over the numbers briefly, but it's really important that you speak with the mortgage specialist. So why don't I send you the number of someone that I work with that really knows what they're doing? And they can give you an even better idea of what you qualify for. And if you're interested, they can even do a pre-qualification. At that point, you would refer that business to either myself or anyone else that you kind of are familiar with. What should I tell my clients about their mortgage? Let's talk about this stuff. I'm going to go over this briefly. There's minimum down payment requirements, which vary based on purchase price. The qualification is based on current debt, which I think we discussed in detail and you saw on the website. There is 90 days history of down payment required. What does that mean? So what that means is we as mortgage brokers are required to collect bank statements that show what the origination of the funds for the down payment were. Usually, the down payment is saved based on income, but if a client has a second job where they're getting cash income, or if they're getting stuff like gifts from family members, there's a couple of other use cases that I won't discuss just to keep this sort of quick, but we have to provide proof of all major deposits. And for you as a real estate agent, it's really important to tell your clients just briefly, any mortgage you apply for requires 90 days history of down payment. So just make sure that you have that available. There are multiple programs available. If your clients are new to Canada, they are still eligible to purchase homes. We have multiple programs available. AAA rates are there. There is a slight rate premium when it comes to new to Canada buyers, but they're still considered AAA. So in today's market, that would still be around 2% purchase price, which works out great. A foreign buyer's tax applies to non-residents. Anyone who is not a permanent resident or Canadian citizen in Canada is subject to the foreign buyer's tax. This is, I believe, specific to Ontario, is 15%. The actual name of the tax is the non-speculative foreign buyers tax or something along those lines, but it's 15%. If your client has the option or the ability to, at some point in the next 5 years, become a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident, then they will be refunded in full the tax that they have paid as a foreign buyer. So let's say, for example, your client comes in as a student, they have the high net worth from their family, and they're able to purchase a home. They would pay 15% tax on closing. But over the next 4 years or 5 years, as they graduate and maybe become part of the Canadian workforce, they would become permanent residents. At that time, they would be able to get a full refund on their foreign buyer's tax. And last thing, what should I tell my clients? Refer, refer, refer. I think I said this in the last slide. Get them to a mortgage specialist or a mortgage broker as quickly as possible. Okay. I think that's pretty much everything that I need to cover there. Let's get you guys a little bit of an overview. What exactly is mortgage insurance? This is one of the questions that pops up the most. Every single mortgage in Canada is insured, regardless of down payment. But what matters is who pays the insurance premium on that mortgage. So any purchase where the client is placing less than 20% down on the home requires the client to pay the mortgage insurance premium. This amount varies, but it's not paid out of pocket. It's added to the mortgage principal, okay? So let's go back to the Realtor.ca mortgage calculator so I can show you exactly what I mean. We're in payment calculator this time, not in affordability. Let's say we have a home that's listed around $450,000, so it's a condo, let's say, maybe even in Oakville, and we'll build out the scenario. So you can see in down payment, it's giving you around 4 scenarios. The first scenario is always going to be on this calculator, the minimum down payment amount. When you have a purchase price that's less than $500,000, your minimum down payment requirement is 5% of the purchase price. So what is the next tier of purchase? The next tier of purchase is above $500,000 and below $1 million. And that tier is you pay 5% on the first $500,000 and you pay 10% on the amount between $500,000 and $1 million. Let's use $750,000 as a purchase price. And I'll click go. And now you can see the down payment has changed to 6.67%. So what exactly does that mean? What this works out to is exactly what I said. It's 10% of the amount above $500,000. In this case, that's $250,000, right? So that's $25,000, and that kind of makes sense. 5% of the first 500 would be $25,000. 10% is another $25,000. So $50,000 is the minimum down payment for this. And I think I glossed over this in the last one, but you can see the mortgage insurance premium is $28,000, right? That's the minimum down payment mortgage insurance premium. And that insurance premium, as you can see in this row, decreases as you go up in down payment. So there's 10%, there's 15%, and then of course, anything above 20%, this mortgage insurance premium is paid for by the lender. So where does the mortgage insurance premium get added? It actually gets added to your mortgage principal. So if we do some math backwards, you can see the purchase price was $750,000. The down payment was $50,000. So you would expect the mortgage premium, the mortgage principal to be $700,000. But actually, the mortgage insurance is rolled into the principal. So the total principal on the mortgage, meaning the total mortgage amount, is $728,000. And that means that this $28,000 is blended into your monthly payments for the mortgage. And this is also why you see lower mortgage rates for purchases below 20% down. Essentially, the lender is trying to slightly subsidize the cost of the mortgage insurance to incentivize you to use this. For a lender, it makes more sense for the client to pay the mortgage insurance premium than it does for them. So it's kind of an interesting hole to fall into. When you speak with the mortgage advisor, depending on how much money you have available and your purchase price, they will optimize this for you. What I mean by that is they will say, hey, look, it's not worth putting 20% down. The rate right now, if you put a high ratio, which is less than 20% mortgage, is more than making up for the fact that you have to pay a mortgage insurance premium. Just to give you some background on that. That's something you should defer to your mortgage advisor. So that's one thing. Paid on any mortgage where down payment is less than 20%. I know that's a lot to cover. Any specific questions that popped up on that issue?
Not on that issue yet. We've had some questions just about the Zolo app, which I thought we could hold off on answering, but no questions about that.
Okay, great. Okay, we covered this part. Amount varies but is not paid out of pocket. The client, as a closing cost, does, oops, why do I keep doing this?
So Mihir, we do have a question coming in about mortgage insurance, just before we move on. Just asking if mortgage insurance is mandatory.
Yes, for AAA mortgages, if the down payment is less than 20%, a mortgage insurance premium is mandatory. We do have alternatives, and I'm going to cover that a little bit later, but if a client does not use the AAA method of lending, then they have options on the alternate and private side where mortgage insurance is not required. I'll get to that soon. Let's defer that question to a little bit later. Actually, I think it's next. Is there any way around this? What if my client doesn't qualify? So lots of people don't qualify on the AAA side. And look, we know what happens on the mortgage qualification side. We know that through our channel, a lot of people attempt fraud. It's our job as mortgage brokers to spot that fraud and to stop it. And at Zolo Mortgages, we are absolutely not enabling this level of fraud, right? When it comes to creating job letters or whatever the situation is that people do, we don't do that. That's not our jobs. We're here to lend ethically and correctly. And we have solutions for people who don't qualify on the AAA side, which are beneficial to both parties. So alternate lending, borderline lending offers multiple solutions for self-employed or high TDS individuals. What I mean by that is if people have high existing debt, whether it's something like a secondary property that they own that they still want to hold on to, or some kind of let's say student debt is something that we see a lot of that hinders their ability to buy, we can still get them qualified for purchasing a home, and the rate is not that much higher. We're looking at going from, let's say, around 2% to still, or just 1% higher into the low threes. And what this allows clients to do is essentially, when it comes to alternate lending, the terms are a lot shorter when it comes to how long you are with a specific lender. That's what I mean by a term. We're looking at anywhere between 1 to 3 years. Within that 1 to 3 years, we find that clients have the ability to move into a home and to pay off debts by their own means, whether that means getting help from family members or using their existing income to pay down their existing debt. So they can kind of eat both pieces of the pie by going alternate lending. And within a year or 3, we can get them back on the AAA side. So it enables a transaction now when prices are relatively low, and it lets the client build the equity in the home, which more than makes up for any interest they would pay above and beyond a AAA rate. Once again, the benefit of going alternate is there is no mortgage insurance premium, but there are restrictions on the down payment amount. Reach out to me, and on a client by client basis, I will explain what we can do for your client when it comes to alternate lending. We see a lot of clients who are self-employed, who are running businesses, who use and utilize their own line of credits quite significantly to run their business, require the flexibility of alternate lending. So the product is sort of catered to those individuals, right? And the best part, besides what I just mentioned, flexibility in income proof. So self-employed individuals write off a lot of expenses. I don't like the term write off. It doesn't make sense to me, but they deduct a lot of costs from their income, which they wouldn't usually do, to mitigate things like tax liability or other issues, right? we understand that. We can actually bring things that they write off back into their income and use it towards qualifying for a mortgage when it comes to alternate lending. And the last part about it is there's no guilt about lying. When it comes to obtaining a mortgage through fraud, one of the things that will always be on the top of your head is that within the commitment that a lender issues, it says specifically, if we figure out that that anything you've given us is fraudulent, we will immediately remove our lending from this property, right? And the only solution I've seen for that really is the lender says, we're liquidating your home, we're repossessing it because we found out that you did fraud when you submitted your application to us. And that's not a great situation to be in, to put it lightly. I think that it might be something where if you screw up once, you are literally never going to be able to get a mortgage in this country ever again, because that's something that goes on not only your credit report, but also on, there is a list of sort of blacklisted people that lenders don't lend to. If you get added to that list, you're not looking at being able to purchase a home in Canada ever again. So there's that guilt that's always going to be bugging you when you do fraud that will never be present if you just pay a slightly higher interest rate and you go through the system legitimately. That's a way that you can explain it to your client. I know that certain demographics, certain cultures, you see the requests for, can you do something for me? Can you qualify me? Whatever that wording ends up being, make sure you are letting your clients know there is an extreme amount of risk involved that goes beyond not just the closing, but the existence of that mortgage. And it's always there, and it's always going to be hovering over their head, right? So final options, we do offer some private lending options. There are some in the market, which I found out during the last webinar, 0% loans available. Other high interest options are available, but should be used and referred sparingly. It's not ethical to have your client purchase a home and have them pay 10, 12, 15% interest on $500,000, $700,000. That's when it comes to private lending, there's something that you should be aware of, which is private loans are interest-only loans. When your client is making a payment, they're only paying the interest. They're not paying down any principal of the home, meaning that their ownership stake in the property almost never increases. The largest level of default in the mortgage industry comes through private lending. There was a huge crackdown on this segment about 3 years ago at this point now, which is probably what burst the bubble in 2017. People were really stretching themselves thin when it came to what they could afford. And the private lending, alternate lending scene was booming. I, with sparing ability, refer clients to private lending. Like it's worst case scenario, if we can find them someone who will finance, let's say, or refinance their existing debt, and usually if the private lending loan is lower than their existing debt, that's the only time for us it makes sense to go into private lending. For you as a real estate agent, it's really important to remember the customer service skills, the future business potential, the referral business potential, and what untangible or soft skills you can use to really describe this opportunity cost of going into private lending. It's really tempting to push people to buy a home to get that commission, but it's more profitable as an agent to let a client know that you do not qualify. You are not, when you are honest with the client is when they gain your trust, and that trust helps you build out a pipeline of future business that is not cold referrals, but warm referrals. So the conversion rates are higher. And it can lead to business outside of that pipeline as well. If you ask a client to leave a review on Zolo's Google page with your name specifically mentioned, clients will make inquiries on Zolo requesting you as an agent specifically. And I've seen that multiple times. Keep this in mind when you are talking with clients about what they can afford, and really reflect on this if you feel like you ever are pressuring a client to get a mortgage or to close in a certain way. Predatory is an apt term to describe this, and don't be predatory towards a client. A short-term commission compared to a long-term commission with referrals makes a lot more sense. So tools to use, and this is sort of the unbranded, branded tools that we've mentioned. Realtor.ca, I think we've covered this really extensively. I'm just going to hop into it again so I can show you guys all of the tools. There's a payment calculator. There's a land transfer tax calculator, which I haven't really looked into. Okay, great. So this does have a city chooser. And why is that important? When it comes to land transfer tax, this is a closing cost for your clients. Let's say you're buying a property for $850,000 in Toronto. There is a municipal property tax, land transfer tax that you should be aware of, and it is exactly the same as the provincial land transfer tax. If you buy a property in Toronto, you're essentially paying double the land transfer tax that you would if you were to buy a property anywhere else in Ontario. Let's change the city from Toronto to literally anywhere else, but I want to keep it where you guys are going to be. Okay, let's look at Stouffville. Look, 0. So keep this in mind. This is a closing cost for your clients. Don't not mention this to a client, right? Don't let them figure out on closing like, holy crap, I need another $13,475 to close on this property in Toronto, and I don't have that. That would be, a reason for a deal not to close and for you not to get paid. There are rebates on land transfer tax, but only if the client is a first-time home buyer. There is a cap on the first-time home buyer land transfer tax rebate. So if the purchase price is $850K, it would end up being just a partial rebate on these amounts. I think it's around $4,000 or $5,000 max. We will let you guys use this tool and figure it out. Yeah, I think let's go with the Realtor.ca tool for now if you guys want to do the webinar consults. There is a TRAB land transfer tax tool as well, which you can use specifically if you want to highlight anything for Toronto. Oh, and it does have the first-time home buyer thing here. So let's do $850,000 like we did in the last example. There's another 0 required. And you go calculate. So if they're a first-time home buyer, did that do anything? I got to hit calculate. Yep, there you go. So the difference being net almost $8,000. Did I do my math right? I think I did. Yeah, almost $8,000 difference in terms of rebate. It does cap, so you can see the full amount is not rebated. It's around $4,500 for Toronto. Sorry, that's Ontario. And the full amount there. Interesting. I wonder how much that actually works out to. Yeah, I don't know the exact amounts. I always use a calculator, so you guys may want to do the same. But good to know. And the mortgage insurance payment calculator. The Realtor.ca tool, once again, does a good job of showing this. Are we in the right section? Payment calculator. So here's the down payment. Here's the mortgage insurance. Let's go with our example. $1 million property has 0 mortgage insurance because the minimum down payment above $1 million is 20%. A property at $850,000 has a minimum down payment of 7% and a mortgage insurance premium of $31,000. Okay, so briefly explain this to your clients, make sure they're aware, and it will help with your closings. Let's talk briefly about Zolo Mortgages. We're about 10 minutes left. So I should be able to cover this in 5 minutes, and maybe we can do 5 minutes of questions. Zolo Mortgages, who are we? We are the sister company to Zolo Realty. We were recently created, so I think we got license approval in Feb or March of this year. We've been operating sort of quietly ever since then. We're really small right now, but we will be eventually growing. And what can we do? We can do all AAA lending. We recently got access to alternate lending and private lending as well. So we are now able to do 100% of use cases for our agents. We can find a solution for your clients regardless of their qualification, and we are quite skilled at getting it. Okay. Where are we licensed? We're currently licensed in Ontario. Our license is processing in BC, and we are like 99% of the way done in creating Zolo Mortgages Alberta. So we're going to be licensed in the major parts of Canada. Why that's important for you to know is we get a lot of relocations on Zolo. So you may have clients who live in Ontario who may be moving out to the West Coast. In that case, you can still keep the clients within the Zolo system. We have a brokerage in Alberta. When I mean by brokerage, I mean a real estate brokerage. We have connections in Alberta, and we have connections in BC. So with the Zolo brand, you can keep them within Zolo within Canada. How do you refer? So essentially, our preferred method for referral is if it's a Zolo client, just grab their the Zolo page for your client on the CRM and put it in an email to mortgages@zolo.ca. And one of either myself or one of the other agents here will reach out to your client and keep you in the loop about how your client is doing in terms of progress and what they eventually qualify for. Okay. That's a really simple way of referring a client. I know I've been getting a lot of requests on Workplace. Can we do this? Can we do that? The only channel that I reply to consistently is the email. You can try texting me. You can definitely call me. I do pick up all my phone calls, but email me, because with mortgage business, there's always sort of, asterisks connected to any approval that I do give. So I have to look at my lender documents. I have to really look at the file and try to understand, is this client qualifying for this product? And at that point, I can give you a real good idea of what they qualify for. That's why written inquiries through the email are my preferred method of you referring business. And as a growth manager, I do have access to your CRM as well. So send over the lead on the CRM. That way I can leave notes anytime the client is qualified and you guys are in the loop. So we are open for questions and answers, and maybe if you guys like, and if you have a case study, we can go over that. So Jane, any questions currently?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much. That was super informative. I love that calculator that you shared. I didn't actually realize that there were 3 different calculators on Realtor.ca. So thanks for going over that.
My
We
pleasure.
have some questions coming in about Zolo Mortgages. Is it for commercial mortgages as well?
Yes and no. When it comes to commercial mortgages, we do have connections for commercial lending, but there's something that you have to understand with commercial lending where commercial lending is not based on the applicant's income profile. It's based on the overall business case for the business, right? Uh, if you have a commercial purchase that's large, let's say for a warehouse or something, it's quite easy to do as long as the client has an existing business case. So do make those referrals to us. Yes, we can do commercial stuff. It's a little bit more involved and the turnaround times are huge, to be perfectly blunt. We're looking at, to create a commercial deal is probably around a month or 2 in terms of processing work. So yes, we do them, but it takes some time to do.
Okay, perfect. And then we have a question about AAA. What does that mean exactly?
AAA. Okay, so let's talk about that. Yes, the market is broken down into different segments, right? When we refer to AAA lending, what we refer to is clients who are highly qualified with low debt, high credit scores, high income, who are able to get the lowest rates possible based on their debt scores, which I mentioned briefly there. The AAA clients are the ones that we would refer to as most likely the ones that are able to purchase a home with no hindrances and with legitimate income. The alternate lending side is when it starts getting a little bit different. There's different buckets, if you can imagine it that way, when it comes to lending. A AAA lender is someone who is willing to lend to a client with the lowest amount of risk when it comes to the default of the loan, which is why the rates of a mortgage are lower on the AAA side, right? It's all based on risk. Alternate lending is when the risk starts getting greater and the rates start getting greater to mitigate that risk for the lender. So if you have a self-employed individual or an individual who's got a high amount of existing carried debt, maybe it's a student loan, maybe it's some kind of exotic car. I've seen that quite a lot. Or it's some kind of secondary property, meaning, maybe they're buying a cottage or something and they're carrying an existing debt in their primary home. In that case, alternate lending would make sense. Slightly higher risk for a default on loan, which is why it's called alternate lending, and it's in a different bucket and higher risk range. And then your final range, really, if you look at 3 tiers of lending, is your private lending, where it's extremely high risk of default. So I think that basically covers that question.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do have 2 questions that have come in, just asking about the same thing here. How specifically do you want people to refer clients from the CRM to you? Are you copying the client profile's URL link and having that just emailed to mortgages@zolo.ca, or
Yes.
should the client be calling you directly?
No, we don't want the clients. Look, when it comes to referral business, if you say, hey, look, here's a number, call this, that client is never going to call us, right? Sales is all about sort of offensive calling with defensive scripts. So send me the link, as Jane mentioned, the URL for the client's page. So every client has an individual URL that does not change. You can send that to me. We will reach out to the client and get them qualified. I think that's the most effective way that we've found of dealing with Zolo referrals. If this is someone outside of the Zolo system, a personal client, and you want to refer it to us, please just make it a simple referral. And what I mean by that is, in the email, just say, here's the name, here's the phone number, and here is the email. Okay.
Perfect. Okay, so a couple of questions again about, there was one particular situation, I believe that was commercial. And then we have another question here about, what can you tell us about the mortgage for a co-op condo?
Co-op condos. I have not done one in a long time. From what I remember, there was really not much difference, but that's a good question. And who's that from? That's from Dimitri? Oh yeah, he's on my team. Hey, Dimitri. I will look into that and see if any changes have been made in terms of a regular condo. So if you're not familiar, right, there's a couple of different styles of condo. There's a strata condo, which is probably what you're familiar with, where individuals have ownership to a certain percentage and their own unit. And then there's co-op condos, where it's sort of shared ownership of the entire building, and there may be some approval process for your client to get in. There are some different rules, but I don't think that there's been much of a change recently from lenders when it comes to co-op condos. Let me look into that. I'll post that. If you guys aren't already part of it, in Workplace, there is a group for mortgages, right? From time to time, I will post something there going forward. I realize I haven't been that active. There's been some stuff in the back end that's taken up my time, but this is a great case study question of if there is a difference between a co-op condo and a strata condo. And I'll look into this and maybe even post a video on it. Thanks, Dimitri.
Yeah, thanks so much. So yeah, great suggestion for everybody on here. Please join the Workplace group, the Mortgages channel, and any other questions that maybe we didn't get to today, feel free to post there again, and I'm sure Mahir will get back to everybody. And thank you again, Mahir, for joining me today and taking over. That was, as I said, super informative. So I think everybody took something from it. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, everyone. And remember referrals are mortgages@zolo.ca. And thanks. And reach out if you guys have any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.